So I know, Lori, you didn't set the topic of this call months ago, but I think it's so apropos to what's going on, how to motivate ourselves and inspire others, because these really are unprecedented times. And I like to think of it like this, is that we are all leaders. So whether you lead just yourself at home, like Alicia, you said, in your own home, or whether you are leading remote teams, or whether you're leading your family, like, this is when leadership matters the most, really. And frankly, leadership is under a microscope right now. How we show up is going to be part of our legacy, because this is just how big this thing really is. And I think that the way that you motivate and inspire people is the same as you would normally, but I think it's amplified now, right? And it has a lot to do with emotional intelligence, just how you're handling yourself so that you can monitor how people around you are responding to you. But specifically, I mean, I love a lot of the things that Tami said. I think the biggest challenge when people are remote is not so much the physical distance, but the psychological distance that sometimes we feel. And some of you mentioned, like, you sort of feel strange today, or scared, or needing interaction, which is why you jumped on the call. That's really the most important. So some of the things that Tami's doing, I think, are great, having those daily Zoom calls. I think there are other things I've heard other companies doing. There's an app in Slack that's called Donut. I don't know if you guys have heard it. It's basically randomly pairs people up who don't normally work together to try to build those relationships. I think having Zoom calls that aren't necessarily about work, right? So book club, talking about books, or, what you guys do every week. Tami, I know you had a lot of good ideas. And I wanted to mention something else. The reason I think Zoom calls are so important in a time like this, especially, and if I were to have one rule, and so maybe some of you will change your setting right now, is to have your cameras on when you have that Zoom call. Because there's something called, I looked this up because I wasn't sure it was real, but it is. It's called the near exposure effect. And just seeing someone makes you connect and like them more. It's like familiarity. And so I think whenever, if you're not, even if you are in your pajamas, even the people on the call, if you want to turn on your videos, it just helps to make that connection. But I would make that a rule when you guys have your Zoom calls, so that it's more than just a telephone call. And there are a whole bunch of other things, but like Tami, I'll sort of wait, because I think a lot of the questions are overlapping. But I basically think that you inspire and motivate people remotely the way you do it normally, but you're just more intentional about it. And you're more aware of the fact that you need that connection. So anything you can do, both at a personal and a professional level, I think is really critical now.
Great, thank you. And Ianna, the next question will start with you. You guys will start to see the pattern, how we're flip-flopping here. We are prepping to close the office and potentially reduce salaries for the short term, but we need to keep everyone still productive and working while at home. How do we do this?
Yeah, so, I think that there are a few things that managers really need to do well now. I think in these times, being candid and being compassionate are super important. So in being candid, for example, I think that means being transparent and sharing what you know, and telling your employees, your staff, or your team when you don't know the answer. I mean, we're all in this together. We're taking baby steps every day. So I think, to explain what your organization can do for people who are worried about, are they going to make their numbers? Are they going to be laid off? Our salary is going to be cut? What your organization is doing, and what you're not certain that they're doing, but that they are working on it because things are unfolding every day. So I think candor is really, really important. I also think that compassion is really important at this time. So by that, I mean, for us to be flexible and human, because many of you have mentioned it just doesn't, even in these trying times, it's still nice to get a hello from your neighbor. So imagine how much more so with your teams, right? So that means, I don't know, and maybe Tami can speak to this, letting people dress in their pajamas. I mean, being flexible with how they come to the Zoom call. Understanding that they may not have the same hours they could because they're caring for elderly, or they're caring for loved ones who aren't feeling well. My daughter's not feeling well, but we're good. And to acknowledge that this is scary. It's uncharted and new for all of us. And finally, you know, so what can you expect from them? Being compassionate. And then finally, I think is to be concise with your message, especially when things are crazy. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've gotten like a lot of emails that just seem like noise to me. Like I'm glad that Old Navy wants me to be well, but really I don't really care about hearing from Old Navy now. You know, I want to hear from you guys, my manager. I want to hear from people. I want to hear from my friends and my peers. So you want to be concise in your message. Give them something that's really value added. So that's what I would say in terms of that.
Great. And you just gave me an idea to share. You talked about pajamas. Well, maybe one day you have a pajama day, just to put some humor into this craziness. So anyhow, just an idea, pajama day. Okay, next question. Oh, Tami, sorry. I gotta follow my own pattern. You guys, and feel free to jump in on me if I get off pattern. My head's a little bit spinning, as everyone's heads are spinning right now. Tami.
So not to repeat to what Ianna just said, I agree with everything, and the transparent communication is extremely important. But to build on your pajama day idea, Lori, one of the things that my team has started is we started a theme per day. And so we thought about maybe, I have to look at my list, Meditation Monday, for example. So having the team share, what are they doing to meditate? What are they doing to kind of keep peace? And then we also have Temptation Tuesday. What's tempting you? Is it food? Is it that bottle of wine at the end of the day now that you're home? That sort of thing. We also have What You Doing Wednesday, Throwback Thursday, and we even are going to throw in Face Mask Friday. So for the men in the team, they may not want to do face masks, but we're going to try to think of ways to put more human in this, and you know, either send pictures or do Zoom calls or that sort of thing to have some fun with these themes, but also kind of keep people out of the fear mode that we've all talked about as well.
Great, thank you. And again, some of these questions came in before COVID-19, but they're still relevant and they're still important questions. So the next one, and Tami, we start with you. I'm in a rut. Any thoughts of getting unstuck? Tami, did you just freeze up? I think Tami just froze up. We'll see if she comes back. Tami?
You wanna?
Yep, Ianna, we'll go ahead and I'll have you answer that. I think Tami just jumped off and she's gonna get back on. The other crazy thing that's happening, Tami's back.
I don't know what happened.
You know, there's overload. It's really kind of interesting, and you never know what to expect, and you have to just kind of go with it. There's overload in some of these programs. Tami and I tried to get into a go-to meeting that should have been able to host 1,000, and we couldn't even get in. So and we did an executive forum call yesterday, and one of the members all of a sudden lost her internet went down. So her backup is her mobile hotspot. There's, you know, kind of these things we haven't really thought about. So she got back on in a mobile hotspot kind of thing. Okay, so Tami, go ahead. I'm in a rut. Any thoughts of getting unstuck?
So my big thing here on the being in a rut is I think to what Ianna was just saying earlier to the other question is we just really kind of need to remind ourselves that that this is just a short period of time. And that we're going to get through this. And so I think to take a step back and to think about, you know, actually to kind of put in somewhat of a positive spin on this. This is a moment in history, and that we're living this moment, and we need to think about kind of how will we remember it, and how will we answer the questions of our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, et cetera. You know, hey, did you live during that time, and what did you do? And so to always keep in mind to put a positive spin on all of this, and to alleviate the fear of that, but always think through those sorts of things.
Good. Ianna.
So I'll answer this question kind of pre-COVID and post-COVID. I'll start with post-COVID, or now. It's not post yet, but as we live through this.
Hopefully very soon.
Yes, God willing. So I think that a rut would be very common and understandable at these times. And I think the best remedy to that is really to practice self-compassion. So I talked about compassion before for your employees, but really self-compassion. So myself included, I know a lot of friends and neighbors were like, oh, I'm finally home. Like, I'm going to do every project I ever thought I was ever going to do. And it's going to get done. And like that, right? So we need to go a little bit easy on ourselves, you know, because we are really bearing a lot of emotional weight that we don't even know that we're bearing. Like, people are scared, and there really are things that are happening that are not pleasant. So I would just, you know, give yourself the space to be in a rut now, right? And until the new normal really kicks in. That's understandable. And I think pre-COVID, how I would have answered that question is to really, you know, I'm a really big fan of checking our language. And I think rut is a really big word. So what I try to tell clients to do is instead try to notice when you feel stuck. So, you know, do you feel stuck when you're doing repetitive things at work? Right? Is that when you sort of feel stuck? And maybe it's time to ask for something bigger, or ask for that project or that promotion that you wanted. Or do you feel stuck when you compare yourself to others and where they are in their career? And then maybe it's time for you to kind of look inside and, you know, try to practice that feeling of, you know, not feeling so envious or feeling grateful. So that's what I would say, is that, you know, a rut is a big thing. Try to chunk it down into things that you can understand and that you can notice, and then work on those. You know, maybe it's you feeling in a rut because you can't stand your manager, right? So maybe, you know, your supervisor, maybe it's time to have that really courageous conversation and to try to make that relationship better. So that's what I would say pre-COVID and now.
Thank you. Good. Oh, Ianna, you're up first on the next question. What should I do to inspire others? Please give some examples.
So, you know, I wanted to make a distinction and between motivate and inspire, because we use them interchangeably. I do as well, but they're really a little different. So motivating is more of an outside force, right? That's compelling you to do something. And we have to take action even when it's hard for us. So we have to motivate ourselves, in my case, like to work out, right? And inspiring, on the other hand, is something that comes from within, right? Something that drives us to want to do something when we're aligned with the mission, or we feel that we're having impact. So I think both are important. I think as a leader, we inspire by setting an example. And so as a leader, I think we motivate, let's start there, by setting up the external factors that will help people be productive, right? So, okay, in these times, making sure that their home office has everything they need. Do they have what they need? Is their internet working? You know, is there, do they have the equipment they need? Do they have the training they need to work at home? Whatever the case may be, that's setting up factors that will help motivate them. And then to inspire them, I think, is to set an example of you're still being passionate about what you do in spite of what's going on. And also to help them, remind them of the importance of what they do, giving them opportunity to feel impact. That's what will inspire them. So that's
Great. Thank you. Tami.
So I don't have too much to add to that, but I definitely agree with the last point that, you know, we need to inspire by example. And so very few things, you know, we've talked about earlier, the communication and being transparent. In the last few days, my team has just reached out to me and said, thank you so much for just sharing that piece of information, or for letting us know that you have that information if we need it, etc. So I think I don't have a specific example, and I'm sorry about that, but I think it's more just about being there and leading by example, and also just making sure that your team is aware that you are there and you work on it together. You may not have the answer that they want, but that you're going to work toward getting that answer for them.
Okay. Thank you both. Next question, Tami, we'll start with you. How can I motivate my staff? And again, some of these are very similar, and I know you were holding off on some answers, both of you. How can I motivate my staff to do their job better?
So I have a few favorite go-tos, and we are probably repeating ourselves on some of these. But one of my favorite go-tos is just positive communication. So So reinforcing that and making sure that your employees and your team see the positive in the side of things, and make sure that you spend time with them to work through that. The other thing is acknowledging achievements. Even if we're not in the office right now, to be able to kind of go give a high five to somebody or go talk to somebody, but somehow either through email or through conference calls like this one, is really being very public about your acknowledgement. And then the last one is in welcoming ideas. So one of the things that, as I mentioned, we're having these either instant message group chats every day, or these video calls with my team. And so I've told them over and over again to please share ideas, kind of what you're asking right now of us. Share ideas with how do we do this better as a team, and listening to them and taking that feedback and implementing it. So I think the positive communication is always important, regardless if we're in COVID times or not. But these are my three go-tos typically.
Okay. Ianna.
I think Tami did a great job on that. I would cede my time to the floor if anyone has a question, but I think she covered that nicely.
Yeah, and don't forget when we go through these questions to unmute yourself and ask a question or ask for clarification, or if there was an app that was mentioned, ask us to repeat that or put that in the group chat too. So we want take the opportunity while we're all together to ask for more information. Okay, next question, Ianna. How do I motivate myself to get work done after trying many things and failing over and over again?
Okay, so again, in these times, I would again recognize that motivation, it's natural for it to come and to go. I mean, we're tired, we're stressed. Again, to go easy on yourself, not to compare yourself to others. I do think there are a few things that I've used with clients that seem to help. One is we focus on our to-do list, but sometimes I ask people at the end of the day to make a got done list so that they can literally look, and it's better than just like crossing off. It's actually making a new list that says, wow, look at me. So it's really about celebrating your wins. I also encourage people to just have the top 3 things that they really need to get done today, right? So there's a whole list of things, but if you got those 3 things done, you would feel like a success. So really try to ruthlessly prioritize so that it doesn't seem so big and you don't feel like I've tried over and over again. Because if you chunk it down, you're likely to get something done, even if it's small, and to celebrate that win. To ask yourself, what's the minimal amount that I would be okay with accomplishing today, right? So that you have, and be realistic. Set something that's doable and achievable so that you can feel that win, because that energy you feel is definitely going to spill over and help you then to accomplish more. So my philosophy is always like evolutionary change, and I like to do things, small wins is what I would suggest. Great.
Tami.
So I love that got done list, Ianna. So I am a big to-do list person, and the got done list, I think I'm gonna copy that and
Awesome.
take advantage of that each day now that we're here. I don't have too much more to add. I would just say go back to what we were saying earlier, and just kind of to Ianna's point earlier, really kind of understand where do we stand today, and don't worry or don't focus on kind of being in that rut.
Okay. Next question. Tami, we'll start with you. Are there any tools you would recommend to use to motivate and inspire myself or others?
So I love this, and definitely all of these questions are kind of blending into each other, and I feel like we're saying some of the same things, but one of my biggest passions is in motivating my team. And so again, I think the virtual platform, it's funny, I saw something somewhere that says we're finally going to use social media for what it was originally meant to be, and connecting people and connecting ideas and that sort of thing. And so if your company does have any sort of we use Link or Skype, or any of these virtuals, or even Zoom, that is my favorite. That is my go-to. Definitely is making sure that we can even just share ideas through this. But also when employees collaborate, not just video, but also through phone or through the instant messaging, you can continue to build that teamwork as well. And then I think the other tool is really just sitting down and discussing with employees what is going on and what do they require, what are they looking for, and understanding that honestly. Again, right now, this week is probably major transition, and a lot of people are kind of to the point in all the introductions feeling a little bit worried, a little bit scared. Some people don't know what's happening with their jobs. Some people are undergoing furloughs, et cetera. So this week is really kind of that weird transition week, but finding a way to have those normal conversations and being very open about, okay, I know that, you know, what you need and what you want may be different from somebody else on the team. And so let's be open and transparent about that and find a way to work together.
Ianna, the tools.
That was beautifully said. I would corroborate everything that Tami said. I would say that now one-on-ones, even though they have to be virtual, are probably more important than ever before. You know, and being consistent about them and having them be weekly if possible, asking people what they need, what they're thinking, what's going on for them. That, you know, just that connection. I know someone who has decided with her team to have like an open Zoom coffee hour for the first like 30, 45 minutes of the day where everyone's just talking, you know, like having their coffee before they get down to business. And then I think because the physical distance, you know, can make a manager feel like, well, what's going on? How are they being productive? How do I motivate them? Processes can also help. So having a daily check-in and then, you know, an afternoon check-in and what you did, you know, what you got done, what didn't get done. And then maybe on a weekly basis to celebrate your wins or to showcase something that you've had accomplished among your team. I think we can really make the technology work for us. You know, I said it before, uncertain, you know, doesn't have to be, just because it's uncertain doesn't mean that it has to be unsafe, right? And I think that people can still have that psychological safety and still feel connected if we make the effort. You know, I think the technology is there for us. We just have to make the effort and get used to new ways of doing it. But all the things that make us good managers and motivate our teams, they still all hold true.
Just have to now shift it through using technology, just a little in a different mode. Okay, thank you. Ianna, what do you do when you used to love your work, but passion has been killed by work-life balance issues?
So work-life balance, I think, and Lori, I probably had a call on that. That's like a whole TCI talk in and of itself, but you're absolutely right. Not feeling in balance or not feeling well can definitely kill passion. But I think, as I mentioned earlier in the call, I'm all about words. So probably many of you have heard this. I don't even think work-life balance, I mean, I think that's what the question is really about. I don't even think work-life balance exists. I think it's a misnomer. I think it's more like work-life fit. I think that things are in balance sometimes and then out of balance other times. And the more we focus, like, you know, take that long range view of things aren't in balance now, but they will be soon, or I think serves us a lot better. But there are certainly things you can do to create more balance, right? And these are, again, a whole nother TCI talk, but getting comfortable with saying no, right? Opening up a space for the things that you really want to do. Start with small things, but start saying no and feeling good about it. It's hard because as women, generally, we like to please people. That's really important. Scheduling time in your calendar, like actually scheduling time in your calendar for, you know, yoga or a manicure or whatever it is, so that it becomes sacred and it's there and it pops up, you know, it reminds you, you've got to be there in 15 minutes. Rewarding yourself for keeping the date with yourself, I think, is also nice, because we need a little push, because normally everybody except ourselves will come first. Our family, our work, our jobs, our dog, whatever, we're usually in last place. So we want to really try to intentionally make time for ourselves. Delegate when you can, prioritize and delegate. That helps with work-life balance. And then finally, if you can, just ditch the guilt when there isn't balance, because there will not be balance all the time. There may not even be balance most of the time. It's really finding the joy when things are even imbalanced sometimes. So I would ditch the guilt. I'm not being a great mom. I'm not being a great professional. I can't just find the good in what you are doing and celebrate those wins. Like focus on that got done list, you know, in the personal side as well, and feel good about it.
Right. Tami.
So I love all of those ideas, and I don't have too much to add. I would just say, as you're thinking about, and it's a little bit difficult in this time of COVID and work remote, et cetera, but take some time to figure out what has changed and think about why that's changed. Not the work remote thing, but your passion for your job. And I agree, there is not really a work-life balance. It's really what is balanced for you in your life. And so it's different than me, et cetera. But then once you figure out what has changed, then figure out and make a plan of how to address each of those things. Sometimes, I know it sounds crazy, it's about asking for more responsibility, because sometimes what you're doing every day is just so robotic maybe that you become bored and you lose that passion from a work perspective. Or maybe it is, you know, if you say, I really like the presenting, et cetera, maybe it's something that you tell your boss or your colleagues, hey, I want to lead that meeting, I want to lead that presentation. And so you do something different. Or if you're really focused and your business or your office or your company has the opportunity to lead an employee resource group, maybe that is something. Maybe there's going to be a new form of virtual employee resource groups now. But either way, I think it's really kind of taking a step back and figuring out what has changed in my role, and make a plan of what you can do about each of those things that have changed.
Thank you. Good. Tami, what do you as professionals do to motivate yourself? And we've gone over some of this already, so and some of these answers. Motivate yourself when you are working on a long closing cycle or project. How do you motivate your team to work harder for a goal with no extra financial incentive?
So the extra financial incentive question. So definitely, in my opinion, I mean, of course, no one's going to turn down a raise or a little extra money here or there, but it's not that's not the thing that is going to motivate somebody from the long-term perspective. And so trying to think of different ways to do that outside of the financial incentive is things like the favorite go-to for most people is some sort of employee of the month or even employee of the week sort of recognition, but finding ways to, and again, it goes back to what we said, you know, what motivates me or inspires me is going to be different than maybe what motivates Lori or Ianna, et cetera. And so I think it's having that conversation with each of these employees or your team and kind of understanding what is it that motivates or inspires you, and then trying to either publicly recognize or other ways to meet those employees' needs.
Ianna.
Exactly. Exactly. I was going to say that, not to say that money is not an important factor. It's just not the most important factor. And in fact, Gallup did a poll. It was called the 12 Elements of Great Managing. I don't know if anyone has heard of it, but they interviewed thousands and thousands of employee manager interviews to find out, you know, what was great managing. And there were 12 tenets. This was among several industries, 120 countries, 40 languages, something crazy. And money didn't even make the list. Like, I like my manager when they give me a raise. It didn't even make the list. Not that it's not important, but it's not the most important. And I think what Tami said about finding out what is important for each of your teammates, that's important, right? To have that one-on-one. Maybe someone wants public recognition. Maybe someone wants flex time. Maybe someone wants to close their door and not be bothered because they're introverted. I don't know what it is, but that is important to find out what does externally motivate them.
Great, thank you. Ken, how do you regain motivation and self-motivation after coming out of a cycle of feeling burnt out? And this is kind of a two-question part. And again, we've already incorporated some of these answers. Any tips on how to engage, motivate, and inspire a team who give low value to self-development and are also with a demanding workload?
So I think it really is along the lines of what I just said, is to find out what is individually important to that team member. So I don't want to repeat myself. I'll cede my time.
Right.
I will just say this: when you have those meetings about what is important and what motivates someone, those one-on-ones, which can now be done just as well, virtually, it's important to adopt sort of an open-minded coaching mindset, if you will, where you're asking a lot of questions and then you're listening to the answers, where you're validating them, especially during this time, where you're acknowledging them, and when you're just staying curious and listening, instead of making assumptions as to what they need and what motivates them. So that's what I would say.
Tami.
And I would only add, again, not to repeat ourselves because they do all get together, but I would also say just kind of also on ourselves is really kind of focusing on what motivates us and what do we need as well, so that we can have that open communication with our team. And of course, the transparency, so that we know, like, I may say what motivates me is I want to have a 3-day work week, but that's not always going to happen either. So I think being transparent and being able to kind of work together on these things, and again, of course, along with my company and my brand, we like to have fun, and so try to throw some fun into things from a motivation perspective. Try to joke around. Again, to my point earlier on the themes, so that sort of thing also, it may not, to Lori, to your point earlier, it may not always be business. It may just be kind of throwing some jokes out there and being human about it as well.
Yeah. So my founder the other day, and this is clearly very, very serious, but our founder, TCI's founder, sent me, she's like, I think you need some humor in your day. And she did two things. She sent me this cartoon that said, in 3 to 4 more weeks, we're going to find out everyone's true hair color. That was one of the things she sent me. And then another thing, she just sent me a text, and it was kind of, she's helping keep me upbeat. She said, our founder, she lives on Fisher Island, and she said, well, these women on Fisher Island are going to have to learn how to turn on the oven. So, I was like, thank you. Thank you, Linda. I needed that. I needed that when she sent it to me. And she is not the kind of person I would have ever expected she would share that with me. So she saw that in whatever was happening that day, or the communication I had with her, that I needed that. So it's surprising from twofold that she did that, and it's so out of character. So I know she did that for me. Okay, our last question, and Tami, we start with you, and then we'll have just a little bit of time for a couple questions from the floor. We do really try, we stick to our timeline. We're respectful of everybody's time. How do you make time to read things that are for greater knowledge, self-improvement, when you have a small office? What's a good way to go over two parts, sorry. How do you make time to read things for greater knowledge and self-improvement? And then the second part of that is, when you have a small office, what's a good way to go over office policies? A weekly meeting or monthly meeting? Individual conferences? And everything's changed now because we all have a small office in our homes at this point. Go ahead, Tami, and then Ianna.
So when I saw this question, I'll focus on the first question first about how do you make time to read? So I am not what you would call an avid reader. As a matter of fact, I don't really necessarily like to read. But a couple of years ago, in conversation with one of my colleagues, we started a book club at the office. We meet once a month. This month's was canceled, but we're trying to figure out how do we make it a Zoom meeting instead. But anyway, so we started a book club. And so I tried to force myself to read, but I also used it as part of a networking thing for my own development as well. But the reading just didn't happen. I tried, and I really tried to force myself. So I took up Audible, and I love it. I highly recommend it. We're not driving right now, but I was on my drive to work and from work. I was listening to books, all sorts of books, business books, self-help books, just for fun books. But definitely gave myself a chance to, for my own development, but also a chance to get away from the traffic frustration, because I kind of focus on the book, which may not be good for drivers around me, but I do focus on the book and I feel good about it. So that was my way. On the office and the policies, again, I think, Lori, to your point, everything has changed right now, but I think it's more finding a way. And sometimes just to get out of the office, some of the things, if we want to have a private conversation and we don't have a door to close, what I have also taken to doing is taking a walk around the building. And that way we're doing our exercise and having walking meetings, but also you have some privacy if there's something that you need to talk about to somebody and you don't have a door to close.
Okay. Ianna.
Yeah, so with regard to the reading, it is a challenge because we are all time challenged. If you think reading something professional is important for your development, then I've seen this work where you have an accountability partner and you guys decide on something that you want to read, both of you want to read. And so now you've held each other accountable, and in 2 weeks' time, you'll have read it and then you're going to discuss it. So I've seen that work sometimes as an idea. And I think with regard to meetings and sharing policies, I think was the question. I think it depends on what policies and what you really want to share in those meetings. So I think just in general, if your company had a daily huddle before, I think that's something you can still do via Zoom. If they had a monthly town hall meeting, I think that's something that you can still do. I think goals meetings should be monthly. And like I said, I think one-on-ones at this point should really be weekly. Because I think that they're so important to feeling psychologically safe and connected. But just in terms of, meetings in general and sharing processes, I think just, good hygiene for meetings is just knowing what the meeting is for. Why are you even having the meeting? To set an intention in their meeting, to stick to an agenda like Lori's going to do. We're going to be done on time, be respectful of other people's times. Not everyone should be in every meeting. I mean, I think, all of those rules still apply. And I think they're just good, like I said, good meeting hygiene so that people just aren't annoyed by them and that they add value.
Thank you. So we have just a minute, and also, and we have big ideas beyond the book, and we always make sure that there's an Audible, that it's Kindle, but not only that there's also a video interview, so that if you don't have time to do any of those things, you just listen to an interview with the author and you understand the topic, because we're not reviewing the book. Really quickly, 3 minutes left. Do I have a question? Whether you don't forget to unmute yourself, or you can just type it in the group chat.
I don't have a question. I'm sorry. Did somebody else have a question? I just wanted to say
no, go ahead, Heather.
I've got a lot of great notes from this. I'm going to check out Slack for Donut and see if I can meet some new people. That's my biggest challenge. I'm only a year in Miami and in sales, so I don't know what I'm doing right now, but this is a great way to maybe meet some strangers, get to know some people. So I love that. And just, again, being remotivated, practicing self-compassion. That's definitely something that I was getting a little high blood pressure yesterday, because I'm thinking, I'm not doing anything. What am I doing here? So, okay, so today, a little bit earlier this morning, I kind of cleaned up my closet on the personal level, and then I'm just kind of checking in on LinkedIn and trying to not necessarily make connections all the time, but more so just being involved, liking posts, being kind of part of a community. So that's awesome. And just for me, I'm not the manager, but I manage my client load. So that's kind of how I think of it with that. So being compassionate, and maybe I don't have a lot of clients because I'm new, like I said, but just maybe sending them a note to say, I know that we're kind of all going through this, and so I'm not calling to ask if you want to talk to me about advertising. I'm just saying, hey, I'm here. We're going to talk again soon. So I just want to say thank you, because I do feel very motivated from chatting through this. So thank you.
And Heather, I would also add to that, that check-in to call and say, hey, we've actually been doing, even though we are a big company, we've been reaching out to each of our suppliers and doing the same thing. A lot of our suppliers are mostly focused on cruise, and so it's also affecting their business in a big way. So we're doing that same thing, and we're just calling. A lot of them are very appreciative of that.
Great. Thank you, Tami. Thank you, Ianna. We really appreciate your insight, your expertise, guiding us, helping us through these times. And to that, and as we close out, for the next 3 Fridays, we're doing a webinar series called Plan B, Managing Uncertainty in the Workplace, which is all around this. And next Friday, we're talking about working from home, the essentials, and then week 2, managing stress and well-being through uncertainty. And week 3, staying connected while social distancing. We've got our leaders for each of those, and we're just looking right now for the group leader for staying connected while social distancing. Watch your emails. We sent that out. We sent the whole series on how to register and log in virtually earlier in the week, and we'll continue to send those out. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and disconnect. Have as much as you're able. Have some downtime. Enjoy yourself. Do something for you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Nice seeing you. Bye.
Bye.